Before anyone took a first breath, life already ran on tiny electric moves. Inside the womb, a baby grew from a few cells into many. Some of those cells started special jobs early. The very first heart cells practiced squeezing. The very first nerve cells began lining up paths. They did not use wires or batteries from outside. They used charged particles, tiny bits that carried plus and minus. These charged particles shifted around and created little pushes like a signal that said, "Now." When particles moved one way, a cell became more ready. When they moved back, it calmed down. That simple change helped the earliest heart cells squeeze in a pattern instead of randomly. It also helped nerve cells start passing simple messages inside the growing body. Electricity did not arrive later. It guided the building from the start. This kind of electricity stayed small, quiet, and completely natural. It came from the baby's own cells, moving their charged particles in careful steps. Each tiny shift changed what a cell did next, resting, waking up, or sending a quick warning. Little by little, more cells joined in, and the signals became more organized. That was what bioelectric signals meant. Life began with invisible currents that helped a body take shape. Inside one tiny cell, a simple job had to happen first. Sorting. The cell membrane worked like a wall with special doors and pumps. It pushed lots of sodium ions to the outside and kept more potassium ions inside. These ions carried charge, like tiny plus signs, so when the cell moved them to different sides, it did not just make a mess, it built a setup. The setup acted like a battery. Outside, there ended up being more positive charge. Inside, there ended up being less positive charge, meaning it seemed more negative. The membrane kept most ions from rushing back, so the difference stayed. But a little bit of potassium leaked out through small openings, and that made the inside even more negative. That quiet difference became the cell's resting charge. This resting charge meant the cell stored energy without moving at all. It stayed ready. If the right signal arrived later, doors in the membrane could open fast, and ions could race down their favorite path. That rush could change the charge in a flash, but none of that could have happened without the first step. The cell separated sodium and potassium and held the line. A nerve cell sat quietly with its charges separated, like a tiny battery waiting. But waiting did not last forever. When the cell got a strong enough push, it fired. That meant special protein doors in its skin called ion gates snapped open. Sodium ions rushed in fast. The inside flipped from negative to positive in a blink. The quiet charge turned into a sudden spark. That spark did not stay in one spot. It triggered the next set of gates nearby to open, then the next, like a line of falling dominoes. Each tiny patch of the nerve cell changed charge, then quickly reset. Potassium ions flowed out to put things back the way they were. This fast open-close pattern created a moving electrical wave. The message traveled along the neuron's long body. The wave moved in one direction because the gates behind it stayed briefly locked, so the signal could not bounce backward. That kept the message clear. It raced forward patch by patch without carrying the same ions all the way down. The neuron reused the same trick again and again. Open gates, charge flips, reset. This was the action potential. It carried information through the body as electricity. The electrical wave raced along the nerve, and it seemed like nothing could stop it. But then it reached a tricky place, the end of the cell. Nerves usually did not touch the next cell. A tiny gap sat between them, called a synapse. The signal could not just keep sliding across because electricity did not easily jump that space. So the nerve used a different trick. When the electrical wave arrived, the tip of the nerve released tiny chemical messengers into the gap. These messengers were called neurotransmitters. They drifted across the synapse and stuck to special receiver spots on the next cell. That sticking acted like pushing a button that told the next cell to get ready. Once the neurotransmitters latched on, gates in the next cell opened and charged particles started moving again. The next cell built its own new electrical spark. The message continued, but it changed form for a moment. Electricity, then chemicals, then electricity again. That jump mattered. It helped signals travel from cell to cell, one careful handoff at a time. All those tiny nerve messages did not just fly around in random directions. The brain and the spinal cord sorted them. Like a super-fast traffic controller, they took millions of little signals and turned them into useful actions. Some actions needed careful thinking, but others needed speed more than thinking. That was where reflexes came in. A reflex was a reaction that happened fast before the brain finished deciding anything. A quick example happened with heat. When a hand touched something too hot, sensors in the skin sent urgent signals into nearby nerves. Those signals rushed into the spinal cord. The spinal cord linked the message to a motor nerve right away. Muscles received the order and pulled the hand back. It all happened in a snap. The body protected itself first, and questions came later. Then another set of signals traveled upward to the brain, and the feeling of pain and surprise arrived. The brain used that slower message to learn, remember, and avoid the danger next time. So, two jobs happened at once. The spinal cord handled the emergency reaction. The brain handled the understanding. Together, they organized countless electric messages into reflexes, reactions, and smarter choices that followed. The signal raced down a nerve and reached a muscle at just the right spot. The nerve ended near the muscle, and that tiny gap still mattered. The message switched from traveling electricity to a trigger that reached the muscle's surface. Then the muscle's own membrane carried the signal inward. A clear order got delivered. Get ready to pull. And the muscle obeyed. Inside the muscle fiber, the signal opened special storage spaces that held calcium. Calcium rushed out like a released key. That calcium did not make the muscle pull by itself, but it allowed pulling to happen. It reached the working parts of the fiber and uncovered places that had stayed blocked. Suddenly, the muscle's tiny machines had permission to grab and move. Those tiny machines acted like two sets of sliding proteins. One set grabbed, pulled, and let go again and again. Each pull slid the fibers past each other, and the whole muscle fiber shortened. Many fibers shortened together, and a big movement appeared outside the body, like a finger bending or a leg kicking. Electricity had turned into motion, step by step, through calcium and sliding pulls. The heart kept facing a big problem. It needed to squeeze in a steady pattern, over and over, all day and all night. But it could not afford to wait for the brain to send every single beat. So inside the heart, a special plan formed. A tiny patch of cells learned to make its own electrical signal, on purpose. That meant the heart started to bring its own starter button. This new starter spot was called the SA node. It acted like a natural pacemaker, not made of metal, but made of living cells. These cells slowly built up charge, then suddenly released it as a pulse. Each pulse told the heart muscle when to squeeze. Then they did it again and again. The rhythm stayed regular because the signal started in the same place each time. Once the SA node fired, the electricity spread through the heart in an organized path like a planned relay. First one part squeezed, then the next, so blood moved the right direction instead of sloshing around. The brain still mattered because it could speed the rhythm up or slow it down when the body needed it. But the heart no longer depended on the brain to begin each beat. The heart kept time with tiny electrical waves, beat after beat. But doctors still needed a way to check that timing without opening the body, so they used a tool called an ECG, short for electrocardiogram. It did not zap the heart, it listened. Small sticky pads sat on the skin and picked up the heart's electricity as it travelled through the body. Those skin pads sensed tiny changes in charge and sent them to a machine that drew a moving line. That line rose and fell in a pattern each time the heart squeezed. A steady pattern meant the electrical signal started in the right place and spread in the right order. The ECG turned an invisible event into something doctors could read, like a track of footprints. But if the heart's timing got messy, the line changed. Beats came too fast, too slow, or skipped in strange ways. The pattern could look squeezed together, stretched out, or uneven. That told doctors the rhythm had a problem, even when the chest sounded normal for a moment. The ECG helped them spot trouble early, because electricity always left a clue. Sometimes an ECG pattern showed a scary problem. The heart's timing got mixed up. The heart still had muscle, but its electricity did not fire in the right order. Beats became too slow, too fast, or just messy. Then the heart could not push blood the way it needed to. That became a big danger, because the brain and the rest of the body still waited for a steady beat. Doctors used a modern helper called a pacemaker. It acted like a tiny timekeeper for the heart. When the heart's own signal came too late, the pacemaker sent a small, carefully timed pulse. That pulse told the heart muscle to squeeze at the right moment. Beat after beat, it kept the rhythm from drifting. It did not replace the heart. It guided the heart's electricity back into a steady pattern. Other times the problem turned urgent, like when the rhythm turned into wild shaking instead of strong pumping. In that moment, the heart did not move blood well at all. A defibrillator helped by sending a stronger shock through the chest. It did not add extra speed. It stopped the chaos so the heart's own pacemaker system could start again in order. One timed jolt could mean a heartbeat returned. All of that electricity did not stay in textbooks or hospitals. It kept running inside regular days. A thought had formed, and millions of nerve cells had passed tiny signals forward, one to the next. A choice had happened, and a plan had spread from brain to spine. Even quiet moments had stayed busy inside, because nerves had still carried messages about sound, light, balance, and touch. Then the body had acted. A finger had lifted, a foot had stepped, and muscles had obeyed because nerves had sent fast electrical bursts. Those bursts had told muscle fibers to tighten, then relax, then tighten again, turning signals into motion. At the same time, breathing had adjusted without asking, because the brain had measured the body and had sent more instructions. Electricity had coordinated it all, and the heart had kept its own beat. Its pacemaker system had fired again and again, pushing an electrical wave through heart muscle so blood had moved every minute. None of it had been loud or bright, but it had been non-stop. Right then, inside every heartbeat and every thought, tiny charged particles had rushed and rested in perfect timing. Long ago, before birth, the first faint sparks had started. Today, the sparks had never stopped.